Hello and welcome to Hispanic Pride, Orgullo Hispano, a bilingual podcast created in collaboration with community newspapers, highlighting leaders who have shaped and continue to influence our community. My name is Maribel Balbin, board member representing District 2 of the Hispanic Affairs Advisory Board of Miami-Dade County. Today is my distinct honor to sit down with former Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Penelas, a leader whose vision and leadership shaped modern Miami-Dade County and who played a key role in the creation of the Hispanic Affairs Advisory Board. Mayor Penelas, thank you for joining us today. Mayor Penelas, many know you for your service as mayor, commissioner, philanthropist. You have been wearing many hats since you finished your public service. We'd like people to know a little bit about you, your personal, your family, growing up. If you just give us a little bit of history about who is Alex Penelas.
Of course, Maribel, and thank you so much for this kind invitation. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I am the son of Cuban immigrants, like so many others. My parents came to this country in the 1960, looking for hope and opportunity, fleeing communism and oppression, like so many others who live in our community. I was born here in 1961, always with the thought that the family would go back, right? And it's been 65 years. I grew up in a family where, hard work was our mantra. We believed in giving back to the community. Both my parents were professionals in Cuba, yet they came here to do whatever was offered of them. My mother worked as a maid at hotels on Miami Beach and later as a seamstress for many years. And my father waited on tables after having picked tomatoes in the Everglades. And that's how we started. But one thing that they definitely wanted was for me to get a good education. Even though they were in this new country, they knew that an education was important. And I went to public school for many, many years, graduated from Champagnat Catholic High School. I'm a graduate of what was then Biscayne College, now St. Thomas University, and went to law school right down the street here at the University of Miami. A few years later, I began my career. But I'm also happily married to my wife, Lilium. It'll be 32 years since we've been married. My eldest son, William, is now 31. I just literally a few months ago passed over the day-to-day management of our real estate assets to him. So he's running the main family business. My second son, Christopher, is an attorney. At Ackerman, very successfully now for 4 years. He's been practicing law. And our daughter, Alexandra, is 14, entering high school, believe it or not, later this year.
Yes.
So, I've been blessed to have a very balanced life, to have had experiences in the public arena, which have been just incredible experiences, opportunities to give back to the community. I hope to have made a difference, but at the same time, I've been blessed with a tight, loving family that has always been by my side. So I truly feel like I'm blessed.
You started your career in public life early. I mean, at 25 years of age.
Right.
What motivated you to do that at such an early age?
As I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Hialeah, lived in Hialeah until basically I was married. And it was interesting because Hialeah has been known for its colorful election season. Candidates knocking on our doors and standing on street corners on 49th Street and 12th Avenue. And that sparked an interest in me, an interest in getting involved politically. But as I said earlier, I also knew the value of education, that needed to come first. And that's why I didn't really embark on my public service career until after I had finished law school, passed the bar, and had practiced law for a couple of years. So it was 1987, actually, when I ran the first time for city council in Hialeah. And basically nobody knew me. I didn't know anybody that was involved in politics. So I got an old-fashioned walking list, voter list, and I knocked on 5,000 doors.
I must say that I remember that, and I remember going to some meetings, when your first meetings, because everybody, let's go see Alex Penelas on the dais, and I remember that your Spanish was not as good, and how you work really intentionally to make sure that your Spanish was going to be better to be able to communicate. I remember all of that about you. So what do you think those early years actually teach you about leadership and responsibility? Like, was that what really like pushed you through?
Those early, I think the main lesson I learned in those early years is that you need to be prepared for whatever you do in life, whatever it is. Be educated and prepared. I had when I first started practicing law, I was 23 years old. I worked at a major law firm downtown Miami, and the partner that was in charge of my matters, Aubrey Kendall, may he rest in peace, said, "Alex, you may lose a case on the merits, but you'll never lose it for lack of preparation. When you walk into that courtroom, you will be the most prepared person. You may not win, but no one will out-prepare you." And that was something I learned, and that's something that carried me through college, through law school, when I was practicing law, and then in politics, where you have to be prepared. Nowadays, unfortunately, you just see so many people shooting from the hip, talking for the sake of talking for the sake of listening to themselves, hearing themselves, and there's no real substance. And that's something that's carried me forward in all aspects of my life, whether I've been dealing in real estate or law or the work that I do for the church. Whatever I'm doing, I always try to be the best prepared.
And you rose really quickly. I mean, you went from city council in Hialeah, you became a county commissioner when we still had the 9 districts.
That's correct.
Which wasn't an easy thing to do. It was a county-wide race.
That's right.
And from there, you actually then worked the whole process to become the first executive mayor of Miami-Dade County, which was just Dade County at the time also.
That's
something
correct.
else that you did, that you make sure that the Miami name became part of the county. All of that, for that trajectory, how do you think that the early years and all the time that you, like you said, you prepare, you wanted to always know what you were doing, how did it all prepare you to actually do that, to become and do these things that you did so fast?
Well, I think my political career evolved, Maribel, as the county was evolving. Like you just mentioned, this was a different place. When I was elected to the county commission in 1990, I was a city commissioner from Hialeah. And so, I had some relationships outside the county, but I was primarily concentrating on issues in Hialeah, but the county was changing. But at the time, even though Hispanics were quickly becoming the majority in residents, it still was not fully represented on the different, electoral bodies. And the county commission was an example, where at the time there was only one Hispanic county commissioner, even though, like I said before, Hispanics were about 50% of the county population at the time, but many had not yet been able to get their citizenship and register to vote, etc. So from a voting perspective, Hispanics were still the minority, and it was reflected on the county commission. So it's kind of like I rode that wave of change, right, of transition. And shortly after being elected to the county commission, the county changed again because of the Civil Rights Act, for the very same reason I just mentioned. And then we became 13 county commissioners. And then I said, well, wait a minute, there needs to be a leader. This is a government. Yeah, we'll pick a chairperson, which is great, but a county of this size, over 2 million people, with these myriad of issues, running airports and seaports and these incredible assets, needs to have an elected leader that runs county-wide. And that's when I proposed the executive mayor form of government, which I, again, interestingly enough, was approved on the heels of Hurricane Andrew, where we really saw the need for that kind of elected leadership, because we didn't have it. We really didn't have it. Not to speak ill of anybody, it just the structure wasn't there.
And it's true. I mean, the population was there, the Hispanic population was here, but nobody was interested in becoming a citizen. Nobody was thinking of engaging politically. All of that was still kind of dormant. And all of this then explodes. And it's when, like what you just said, starts happening. And it's why we have the representation we have today. the same as today, at the time, I mean, you have always been like a consensus builder. And what do you think helped you navigate the diverse communities that we have? I mean, obviously, you don't win by just having the Hispanic vote. You know, you need to build the coalitions. What do you think helped you make that connection amongst all the different communities to build that coalition that will get you elected eventually?
Again, it was a different time. Here, I've been a registered Democrat since the day I registered, and I was elected councilman in Hialeah.
Yep.
Go figure. I mean, it's impossible but during those years, partisanship really wasn't the issue. Yeah, you belong to one party or the other, but voters were more interested in the values, the agenda, the platform, the qualifications of the candidate. And I think that helped me tremendously because, yes, I do believe I was a consensus builder. I had as many supporters and county commissioners who helped move my agenda forward who were Republican as I had Democrats. And unfortunately, we've lost that tremendously over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, on the local races, it was nonpartisan. It was supposed to be nonpartisan.
It's still nonpartisan.
So but you couldn't tell anymore, right?
No, you can't.
At the time, it was more like nobody really paid that much attention to making that distinction. But then little by little, it grew into what we have today.
So clearly, that environment helped a consensus bill, and also, I've always considered myself to be a moderate, right? I'm not a radical Democrat or a radically anti-Republican. No, I've always valued people for their worth, whatever that may be. To me, it hasn't mattered where you're from or what your sexual orientation is or whether you're tall or short or black or white. To me, that's not an issue. I think we all have the ability to contribute and the right to enjoy what a community has to offer. I never looked at any of those factors as barriers to representation. I didn't care where you were from or whether you spoke with an accent or not. And I think that helped build consensus. Now, a lot of those issues are stumbling blocks, unfortunately.
Yeah, like you said, there were different times. Definitely. One thing we consider one of your lasting contributions, of course, is the creation of the Hispanic Advisory Board. What do you think was happening? What do you remember happening at the time that it felt like necessary to create this board? Great
question, because I think to a great extent it has a lot to do with what we mentioned earlier, where Hispanics were growing in numbers, but were not adequately represented at the different levels of government. So the Hispanic Affairs Board basically evened the playing field. It was an opportunity for there to be debate, deliberation, ideas, the setting forth of policy and recommendations to impact the Hispanic community. Because again, at the time, I was the only Hispanic on the county commission. There were 9 of us. Obviously, that grew in 1993 when we went to single-member districts. Yes. And again, not coincidental that in 1992, you see the creation of the Hispanic Affairs Advisory Board. A year or so later, you have the expansion of the county commission to include then 6 Hispanics. Things were changing, but the creation of the board at that time was that opportunity. It was a recognition of the significant contributions of the Hispanic community, the potential that community had moving forward, which we've seen, and the ability, very important, because as you look into the future, the ability to work with other communities, right? Because we did seem to focus more in that period of time on Hispanics, blacks, et cetera. I think there's a little bit less of that now because we're more of an integrated community, but it was the right thing to do at that particular time. I'm proud of that accomplishment, and I think the board's done good work over the last, 30 years or more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very proud to be part of it at this time. And do you think that the needs that were identified at the time, I mean, there was a gap of different things, like you were saying, do you think those needs have been addressed? And do you think there's a need still to a Hispanic Advisory Board today?
I would say yes for several reasons. Were the needs met? Yes, if you look at it from the perspective of making sure that Hispanics had adequate representation at all levels of government, in the budget, on the county commission, etc. And is there a need moving forward? Yes, but it's a different need. It's a different objective. I think now the success of a board like the Hispanic Affairs Board will be not so much advocating just for the Hispanic community, but how the Hispanic community can be the foundation for the overall growth, because now it is the majority. Hispanics are the majority in Miami-Dade County. So you go from an underdog position, a minority position, to a majority position, and your priorities should change. Your outlook should change. It shouldn't be just focused on what's good for the Hispanic community. It should be good, yes, what's good for the Hispanic community in the context of the entire community. Right.
So on a minority-majority type of case that we're in now, what do you think should be like what should the board members focus on? What should the board members of this board right now look at their responsibility towards the community? Like you say, it's kind of like flipping from the original. So what would you say that we should actually concentrate on?
Well, part of the role, I think, should be, highlighting the potential that up-and-coming Hispanics, young Hispanics, immigrants have, not just to today's Miami-Dade County, but to tomorrow's Miami-Dade County, and how that those individuals can actually help the overall community. And I think that's the difference. It shouldn't be just singularly focused on one community, but how contributions of Hispanics can benefit the entire community. That should be the focus.
Okay, I think that's very good advice. During your 8 years as mayor, I mean, you did a lot of things, and you traveled, you represented us all over the world. If you were to name a few, what you consider your accomplishments that you're most proud of, what would they be?
Well, I'm proud of the work I did with David Lawrence to bring universal pre-kindergarten to 4-year-olds. Humility aside, I think it's probably been one of the greatest public education accomplishments of this state in decades.
Absolutely.
The fact that now a child, regardless of where they're from or whatever the case may be, starts their education at 4 years of age as opposed to 5. That's important. And over 2 million 4-year-olds have benefited from that program since it was first implemented. It was passed in 2002 and went into effect in 2005. The work that we did banning discrimination based on sexual orientation, I think, was important. Again, talking about a moment where it was not an easy decision to take the lead on issues like that, but we fought that fight. I was threatened with a recall. I mean, you name it, but we did the right thing, and we took a bold stand that we would not discriminate based on sexual orientation. The work that we did on homelessness,
yes, where
today it's still a model for the nation. People, it's interesting how people still, there still are pockets of homelessness. People forget what this place was like in the late 80s, early 90s. You couldn't go downtown anywhere. At one point, we had over 10,000 documented homeless in Miami-Dade County, many of them on the streets of downtown Miami. And yes, having 900 or 1,000 that we have now is a lot. But things have changed too. It's interesting how the homeless population has undergone change. Before, it was basically issues related to drug use. Then we saw mental health being a primary concern of the homeless. Now it's affordability. A lot of people are homeless because they simply can't afford to pay the rent, to make ends meet. So they have a job, but they have to sleep in their cars. I mean, so I think the work on homelessness is also something I'm proud of. Many other things that I worked on over the years. But again, I give a lot of the credit to what you mentioned earlier, that collegial environment that I worked in at the county when I was a county commissioner, later when I was the mayor, where I had a lot of support from my colleagues. The fact that we were able to change county government to have single member districts. And then we created the executive mayor form of government, which eventually evolved into what we have today, the strong mayor. I'm proud of all those steps we took of changing the county's name so it would be a recognizable destination in the world, because I would travel. Dade County, where's Dade County? Is that part of Miami? No, it's kind of the other way around. Right. And don't forget that happened in the midst of a bankruptcy filing by the city of Miami.
Yes.
Let you not forget.
Yes.
When all that occurred. So a lot of things during those 8 years as mayor, which I'm proud of, establishing Miami-Dade County as truly a gateway. It was always to Latin America, but a gateway to Europe. We opened an office in Madrid, the airport. I mean, the expansion of this brand that we now know is a global brand. I'm proud of the work that we did in that regard. Interesting
that you mentioned those particular projects, or because those were also totally supported by the voters. These were voter supported. Things that needed to happen. I mean, it was identified as such, and they supported you. And I mentioned those same type of projects when talking in other places. And the homelessness, this is we address it this way, Miami-Dade. We address the Children's Trust, things that other areas obviously do not have. So yeah, those are definitely amazing things that you accomplished. Looking back, you think there's anything that you would have done differently? Anything you say, well, this particular thing would have worked better?
I wish I would have tackled the transportation issue sooner. I tried in 1999 with a full penny. Unfortunately, bad timing. It didn't pass. We finally passed the half penny in 2002, but that was as I was leaving county government. And unfortunately, we've seen the gross misspending of that money over the past 2 decades. I wish I would have tackled that sooner. I still think that if there's one thing that's going to hold this community back, is the lack of a true mass transit system. I know we've tried to make strides in that regard over the past few years, but I think there's just a lot more we should have done then and a lot more we need to do now.
One thing that is different a little bit, that maybe it was still a problem then, but the issue of affordability, which is such a huge issue today. What do you think are maybe some steps that need to be taken that are not being taken, or it's something that we need to support maybe that is already happening in our leadership today?
Well, I'm encouraged by, for example, zoning changes that have occurred to encourage higher density uses along the major transit corridors. I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged by the debate we're having right now regarding the use of public land, like school land and things of that nature, to build affordable housing. But it is concerning to me because I see the middle class shrinking in Miami-Dade County. Before we were all middle class. Mm-hmm. My parents' first home, obviously, I'm talking about 1961, but they were able to afford a new single-family home in Hialeah. That dream, that opportunity, is really not accessible to my son's generation. They were able to buy their first homes because Lily and I helped them. That generation is suffering right now from that perspective. It's great that we're attracting the big names and the big companies and the billionaires and all that, but what is that doing to the folks that are just trying to buy their first starter home? It's squeezing a lot of those folks out of those opportunities. So I'm concerned about that, and I'm glad though that it really is top of mind for many. Now, there's still strides to be made. I do think something has to happen with property taxes, and I get it. We need property tax. There is some inequality there. And the other issue, Maribel, is the property insurance. I mean, these are serious issues because if you have a mortgage, you have no choice. You've got to have wind insurance. You have to have everything else because the banks require it. So those are things that I think a lot more needs to get done if we're going to tackle some of these affordability issues.
We hear a lot of our candidates right now, people that are running for different offices across the state. And the conversation is that they have children, like you just said, and they're moving out of state. They not only can they not afford buying a house, they cannot even pay rent for a house.
Right.
We're having in our schools, I was just doing career day at my grandson's school, and they have lost about 1,200 students in that particular elementary school in Hialeah Gardens. And these are people that have, some of it has to do with immigration, but a lot of it has to do with people just simply moving even farther up north in the state of Florida or out of state because Miami-Dade County has just become unaffordable. on our leadership today, I mean, as far as what is happening and what their focus is there anything that you could think should be done more of, or do you think we're doing the things that can be done? I mean, there's not much more that can be done.
Well, again, I think some steps have been taken. Things like in-law quarters, the ability to use space in existing single-family homes for second families. There's things that can be done. There's no doubt. And are being done. But at the legislative level, I think we definitely have to tackle property taxes, and we have to tackle property insurance, because those are the two factors that are holding people back the most.
Absolutely. Yeah. The insurance is just ridiculous. Absolutely. After public service, I mean, you have you transition into academia, media, and business. What did that shift teach you about leadership outside government? I mean, what's your experience
It's
there?
interesting, because in a perfect world, I would have prioritized my career choices in the opposite direction. I would have begun in business, in academia, in real estate, because there's so much to learn from the real world, from having to, balance a business checkbook, about dealing with up and coming. There's so much to be learned in the community. I did it the other way, and I don't regret the way I did it. But what these years out of elected office have taught me is how much the decisions elected officials make really do affect the population. And unfortunately, what a huge, and it pains me to have to say this, the disconnect that exists on both ends. The disconnect that exists between the elected official and the constituent that they represent, and the constituent with the elected official. Most constituents have no clue what their elected officials do.
Absolutely.
No clue as to how they impact their lives. No clue how to be involved in the electoral process. And because of the partisan nature of all these local elections, the elected officials are less and less concerned today about what the constituent needs and more about what the party wants them to do. What's the talking point? On both sides, I'm not distinguishing, because you have the radical left and you have the radical right, and they're both reading from a script.
Yeah.
And if you don't follow the script, then whoever the leader of the moment is in that party, you get basically put to the side. And that's a shame, because, yeah, like I said before, I've always been a registered Democrat, but the party doesn't tell me what to do, what to say, or how to conduct myself. Never has. Never will. And maybe that's why I was never able to get elected to a partisan position, right? Because I'm not just a rubber stamp. Mm-hmm. But at some point, we got to go back to listening to what people actually need and want, not to what some piece of paper says.
Yeah, but it has to do with that disconnect that you just talked about. I mean, the voter, those that vote, they go and vote, and then they go home and never realize that now this guy has a responsibility towards me. I voted for him. I need to ask, if I have a need, I have the responsibility to bring it up to them, and they are supposed to address it too. That, I mean, as a legal women voters person for 30 years, we've worked so hard on just making, how do we make that connection, making sure that the voter knows that the elected official has a responsibility to solve your problems. And we don't have that, because also now the elected official chooses their voters rather than the voters choosing necessarily, because all the data and all the numbers, and, you get elected by just in all kinds of ways.
And look what's happening. People are choosing not to be members of parties. They're choosing to be NPA. And that's why I'm all for reform at that level, having, nonpartisans participate in these primaries, because
the open primaries, absolutely.
Because the problem, well, I don't need to tell you what the problem is that you're left with the extremes of both parties. That's all that's left on the ballot. And then the people in the middle, they can't vote because they can only vote in November during a general election.
Do you believe that former elected officials have a responsibility to remain engaged, civically engaged in their communities? Or
Absolutely. And I think it is a sacred, extraordinary responsibility, one that I take very seriously. And not that I'm out there publicizing it every day, not that I'm doing podcasts like this every day, but I do take very seriously my role as a mentor, a senior statesman, whatever you want to call it. I'm frequently meeting with especially younger, up and coming elected or folks who want to participate in elected office, to share with them, this unique perspective that I have, because there's only a few of us, right?
Very few.
Yeah. So to share that experience with people who want to serve the public, I think is a responsibility that we have. Absolutely.
And having you seen Miami-Dade evolve over the decades, how do you view its future?
Listen, we have certain attributes which are undeniable, right? Our geographic position, our climate, the diversity of our people, the fact that we are a bridge to Latin America, we're a bridge to Europe. Those are undeniable attributes that will always be with us. But that alone isn't enough. Our future will continue to be bright if we tackle some of these issues we've discussed here today: the affordability issue, the education issue, the transportation issue. We can't just rely on our geographic position and our diversity. In fact, unfortunately, nowadays, diversity is becoming under attack. Right? Yep. So we have to continue to work hard to make sure our infrastructure, our educational foundation, our economic structures are such that Miami-Dade is a place that anybody could aspire to live in, not just, the well-off.
And just in closing, if you had to define your legacy in one sentence, not as a politician, but just as a public servant, what would it be?
I've always told my kids that the most important thing I've left them, if you want to call it a legacy, is the last name. A last name that people can look up to and be proud of, and not say, oh, you're Penelas' kid. That's so important, is to have left your children a legacy of goodwill, good reputation, an honest reputation. I think that's the most important thing.
Mayor Penelas, thank you for your leadership, your service, and for helping lay the foundation for institutions that continue to serve our community today. And thank you to our audience for joining us. Hispanic Pride, Orgullo Hispano, a bilingual podcast created in collaboration with community newspapers. I am Maribel Balbin, board member for District 2. Follow us on Hispanic MDC on Instagram, Facebook, and X, and on YouTube at Advocacy MDC for more conversations like this. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.